testified that you don't recall sort of specifically anything as far as clothing for Mr. O'Keefe. Is that correct?
I was not paying attention to the clothing.
And so to that point, what were you paying attention to at that?
Primarily, the big issue was doing the CCR, then to CPR. We're trying to resuscitate the person as best we can. We know with the hypothermic patient, it's very difficult. It's a longer treatment protocol than a typical cardiac arrest because we have to do the CPR for an extended period of time. We have to get the patient warmed up. So the clothing is just quickly removed versus examined or looked at. And the focus was on getting compressions done. Someone was trying to intubate, getting a line started. So that's what we're mainly focused on.
As far as treatment is concerned, what, if any, sort of interplay or intersection is there between a cardiac arrest and a hypothermic patient?
When someone's hypothermic and in a cardiac arrest, we can't declare them dead or passed on until they've been warmed up. A lot of times with hypothermic patients, they can appear to be dead when they're still actually alive. So there has been instances where people have woken up in morgues that were hypothermic when their body warmed up a little bit. So we have to be very cautious, very careful about, treating them as much as we can, as careful as we can. We can't shake them too much, can't move them too much. So it's getting the blood circulating and then starting ventilating after a few minutes.
Back to the CCR, the chest compression
Yep.
that we're talking about. What, if any, sort of, based on your training and experience, what, if any, sort of protocols are, well, let me ask you this. Were you doing chest compressions throughout the entirety of this interaction with the patient?
No, chest compressions, most people do it for about 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, it's very tiring to do chest compressions, so we swap off every few minutes. So a different person will come in and do the compressions. They'll do it for a little while, go into a different task. Someone else will come in and do compressions.
Is that sort of the protocol that you followed in this instance?
Yes. Yes, we were rotating the person doing compressions.
And the ambulance at some point leaves the scene and goes to a hospital. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you know what hospital? Mr.
Good Samaritan Medical Center.
If you could just wait. Till
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
questions.
Yeah, Good Samaritan Medical Center.
And did you go along for that ambulance ride?
No, I did not.
And where did you go?
So as the lieutenant on the engine, I stay with the engine. I detailed my 2 other engine personnel to the ambulance. So they went with the 2 engine personnel, the 2 regular people on the ambulance, as well as an additional person. Timmy Nuttall was the extra person for that one.
And so you take the engine and go with?
I went back to the station.
And at some point shortly after that, are you called back to the roadway of Fairview Road?
Yes.
And same general area of Fairview Road?
Yes, same address.
And how is it that you get from the station back to Fairview?
So we had struck a box to cover the personnel that we had detailed. That means we send out a page looking for additional people to come in. We had Sam Pock come in. So he was my engine driver. And I was in the lieutenant's seat. We responded back in engine 4.
And the ambulance that had been there on Fairview Road with you previously was at Good Samaritan.
Yes. Yeah. A call like that takes an extended period of time, even at the hospital, to assist them there. So we had to get an ambulance from Station 2.
And if you know, who was on that ambulance from Station 2?
That was Jason Becker and Dan Whitley.
Now, with reference to this particular call, what, if anything, was this secondary dispatch with regard to?
So this call was for Section 12, which is someone in having a psychological issue.
And do you know who that Section 12 was in regard to?
Yeah, this was for Karen Reed.
And at some point, you go back to the scene along with the engine and the second ambulance from Station 2?
Yeah, so the engine got there first. The ambulance coming from another station, so it was a couple extra minutes before they got there.
And when you arrived, who, if anyone else, is sort of on scene on Fairview Road?
The police were still on scene. They had never left. So initially it was me, Sam Pock, and the police. So I went up to try to get the backstory of why we're doing a Section 12 and what was going on.
And at some point, well, when you first arrived, without regard to what was said to you, but who, if anyone, do you speak with to sort of try to gain this information or backstory?
When I got onto the scene, I talked to the police that was that was there.
Who'd you talk to, sir? The police officer who
Police
was there?
officer, yes, sorry.
And do you recall specifically who that police officer was?
I really did not pay attention to the individual officer.
And at some point, do you have a conversation, or what, if any, conversation do you have with the patient in this case, the defendant, Ms. Reed?
So it was when we identified Karen Reed as the patient, the ambulance arrived shortly after. We started talking to her and trying to get her into the ambulance to talk to her further.
And just to be clear for the records, when you say Ms. Reed, do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes, she's right over there.
That's a record reflect identification of the defendant by the witness?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, with respect to the defendant, Ms. Reed, where is she sort of when you first make contact with her on scene when you come back?
In the general vicinity of where the police cars are.
And what is sort of the purpose of this initial conversation that you're having with Ms. Reed?
For Section 12, that's when someone's made threats to them, harm themselves or others. So I just had to judge her mental ability at the time, and if she was a threat to us, and how much of a threat she was to herself. So just a quick evaluation, see how her behavior was.
And what, if any, observations did you make of her during your quick conversation?
She appeared very distraught, very upset. Initially just trying to explain the situation to her about going to the hospital with the Section 12, and she was resistant to that.
And so when you say she was resistant to that, what if anything, did she say or do to?
She did not want to go.
Hold on. You cannot talk over each other. The objection's overruled.
Yeah. Okay.
Please go ahead.
So what was the question again, please? Yeah.
So what, if anything, when you say she was resistant, what, if anything, did she communicate to you, or observations did you make in regards to that?
She did not want to go to the hospital, and she didn't think she needed any assistance.
And what, if anything, are you sort of, you mentioned you were explaining sort of the process to her. What, if anything, are you saying in that explanation?
Well, once a Section 12 gets written, it's written by the police. Once it's written, we are required to transport to the hospital. Section 12 means that they believe you're a threat to yourself or others. So you have to get evaluated at the hospital by the hospital staff there to see how mentally stable you are.
Now, at this time of this conversation, what, if anything, did you know as far as the relationship between Ms. Reed and the prior patient, Mr. O'Keefe?
I knew they had a relationship. I wasn't sure if they were married or engaged or what their status was, but I knew she was did have a strong relationship with him.
And in reference to Mr. O'Keefe, during your conversation with Ms. Reed, what, if anything, was she asking or saying in reference to Mr. O'Keefe?
She kept repeating, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" She seemed very concerned about that. We're trying to explain to her that we cannot declare him dead. He's being evaluated. He's being treated. They're trying to treat him the best they can.
And as far as when she's stating these things to you, is this, as far as the sort of tonality of her voice while she's saying these things to you, can you describe that?
She was very up and down. It was a repetitive conversation with her. She's obviously experiencing a lot of different emotions. So just her emotional state was all over the place.
And as far as this sort of second time that you're on scene, about how long period of time are we talking?
That was about between 15 and 20 minutes.
And as far as your conversation with Ms. Reed, where did she go? Did you stay with her sort of the entire time that she was on scene that second time? Or
because she was resistant, we were trying to get her to voluntarily go. If someone voluntarily goes, even with the section written, they're released a lot quicker. So we're trying to convince her to go, be willing to go with us versus being forced. If at some point we have to actually force her to go against her will, then it's going to be a much longer hospital stay. So our main goal with staying on the scene so long was to try to get her willingly to go. It just makes her experience much better.
And just to be clear, when you say we, who specifically are you?
It was me, Dan Whitley, Jason Becker were the ones talking to her in the back of the ambulance.
when you clear, sort of when you leave the scene, where is Miss Reed at that point?
So the ambulance transported her to the Good Samaritan. We also detailed Sam Park as the driver.
So the gentleman who had driven, or the firefighter that had driven you in the engine to the scene that
Yep.
drives the ambulance away.
Yes,
Could
correct.
you say his name again, please?
Sam Park.
Sam what?
Sam Park.
Spell it, please. The last name.
P-O-C-H is the last name.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Okay. Ready?
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Woodbury, you and I have never met or spoken, correct?
No.
I know you had said you were nervous, so I'm going to try and make
Okay.
this fairly brief,
Thank you.
sir. I just have a couple of areas that I'd like to go
Okay.
to you with. So to your interaction with Karen Reed and what you actually heard from her mouth.
Okay.
That's sort of where I want to concentrate, as opposed to anything that anybody else may have said to you about what they believe she might have said. Okay?
Okay.
And it seems to me that your main interaction with her was not when the initial call came in to respond to, a man who was unresponsive in the snow. It was after you went back to the station in the engine and then came back to the scene for the purposes of the section 12 that you described. Would that be fair to say?
Correct.
And when you came back to the scene for the section 12, it's also fair to say that the section 12 issue was your focus, correct?
Correct.
You had an order in hand, correct?
The police had it and they gave it to us when we got there.
Right. Okay. So you got an order in hand once you got there,
Correct.
which is what you expected to happen, correct?
Yes.
And your focus at that point is, okay, and I don't want to be too, flip, but we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Is that a fair characterization?
That is one way to put it.
And you wanted to do it the easy way.
Yes, correct.
And you wanted to persuade Karen Reed that she should want to do it the easy way, correct?
Yes.
And after some conversation back and forth where she was initially resistant, she eventually agreed, yes, I'll do, not to put words in your mouth or hers, but to the effect of, yes, we'll do this the easy way, correct?
Did get her to agree to transport.
And with regard to her state of mind, I believe you had testified that she appeared to be very distraught,
Yes, correct.
going through a lot of emotions,
Yes.
grief-stricken,
Oh, that's one of them. Yes.
hysterical at times,
Yes.
raising her voice at times,
Yes.
crying at times.
I didn't see any actual tears, but
That
yeah,
type
of emotional display.
All right. And so in terms of the only commentary that you heard with regard to her feelings or questions regarding John O'Keefe, it was the statements that you heard repetitively over and over and over again. Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead?
That was some of the things she was saying. Yes.
Your Honor, may we approach sidebar briefly?
Okay. So I
Lieutenant
think,
Woodbury.
Hold on,
I
hold
think,
on for a
Ms.
sec.
Giannetti, I think you need the actual,
Yes. I was going to ask a couple of questions first and then grab it.
but it's right there for when you need it.
Lieutenant Woodbury, on your direct examination,
Mhm.
you testified a bit, and I don't want to block a jury here, I'm sorry. You testified a bit about the injuries that you observed on John O'Keefe when you first arrived at the scene, correct?
Yes,
You testified about the swollen eye,
yes,
and you also testified about the scratch marks that you saw on his forearm, correct?
correct.
I'd like to show you, I'm going to approach in a minute, to show you what has been marked M for identification. And when I hand it to you, please keep it to yourself and look at it, and then look up at me when you're done, okay? Having reviewed M for identification, do you recognize what that depicts?
Yes.
What does it depict?
That is Mr. O'Keefe's right arm.
Does that photograph appear to be a fair and accurate representation of the scratch marks that you observed on January 29th of 2022, sir?
Yes.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
Okay. That will be our next exhibit. And again, we'll have to maybe renumber. Counsel, before you leave today, we have to figure out how to keep everything straight.
Understood. And with the court's permission, Your Honor, may I have that published on the screen for the jury?
Yes.
Now, on direct examination, Lieutenant, hang on. Let me just have a moment. Oh, good point. I'm going to try to get out of your way so that everybody can see. With regard to the injuries that you described on direct examination, Lieutenant, I believe you would mainly concentrate.
I'm sorry. I need to, please take this down for me. I need to
This court is in session, please be seated.
So jurors, I can assure you that by Monday, I mean, we're in really good shape. It's an organizational situation that I have to deal with. So we've been dealing with that. We appreciate your patience and we are in good shape. And Ms. Dianetti, if you need the exhibit, it's here.
Terrific. May I have it published again on the demeanor?
Yes.
Now, Lieutenant, with regard to the injuries that you observed, did you notice any lividity on the body when you were looking at John O'Keefe?
Being hypothermic, he was very pale overall. So the skin wasn't pinked up yet. So it's hard to really judge the rest of the skin that way until it's warmed up and much later into the scene.
You are familiar with the term
Yep.
lividity, though?
Yes.
And could you just explain that to the jury?
That's like bruising.
Bruising.
So it's the pooling of blood in lower sections. So for like a cardiac arrest patient, when they have lividity, it looks like bruising on the underside where all the blood has pooled. And we did not really notice that.
But it's not actually bruising from an injury, it's just the blood being
Settling down.
right?
It's the same thing, yes.
One at a time, please.
Yep, sorry. So it appears like bruising, and bruising is basically pooling of blood under the skin. So lividity is just gravity-fed pooling of blood under the skin. And it usually happens what is the section of the body that is lowest.
I see. Okay. Now, with regard to the scratches that you've testified about and that you now observe on exhibit 382, I believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your testimony on direct examination was that you observed them in the forearm area, correct?
It was the right, like forearm to arm. I was trying to signal like right up here, but yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I guess that's not.
Yeah.
It wasn't just on the
Not just, it was the arm area, mostly what I noticed was forearm, but there was some around there.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it wasn't just below the
It
elbow?
wasn't up just below the elbow.
There was some above the
Yes.
elbow as well?
Yep.
That's consistent with exhibit 382?
Correct.
On each moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
No further questions.
Mr. Lally, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Lieutenant, thank you very much. So
Okay,
you're all
thank
set. Your next witness, Mr. Lally.
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth would call Mr. Daniel Whitley to the stand.
You tell us whether you ever given the court and during the case down here, and the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Daniel Whitley, Whitley.
And what do you do for us, sir?
I'm a paramedic firefighter with the Town of Canton Fire Department.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton Fire Department?
I was hired in March of '06.
And prior to that work with the Canton Fire Department, did you work within that same field in any other capacity for any other company?
Yes, correct. I worked for American Medical Response out of Brockton as an EMT intermediate and a paramedic for 5 years.
And you're a certified paramedic, is that correct?
Correct.
And how long have you held that certification?
It was, I believe, November of 2006 that I got that certification.
And is there any sort of continuing educational component or recertification process that's involved with being a certified paramedic?
Yes, we recertify every 2 years. We're required to hold basic life support card, which is just generally CPR, and advanced cardiac life support, which is ACLS. It's more dealing with EKGs and how to run resuscitations, cardiac arrests, things of that nature.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to January 28th into January 29th of 2022, were you working with the Canton Fire Department on those dates?
Yes,
What kind of shift were you working in?
24-hour shift, 8 a.m. to 8 a.m.
And where were you assigned on that particular date?
The Ponkbog Station, Station 2.
The Ponkabog Station, where is that located within Canton?
The north side of town on Sassamon Street.
And how were you assigned to a specific duty or a specific?
Yes, I was assigned to Ambulance 2 with Jason Becker. As I was a field training officer at that point, and he was just finishing up his field training after he recently became certified as a paramedic.
And now, at some point shortly after 6 a.m., were you aware of a call or dispatch in regard to Station House 1?
Yes, we had just returned from a previous call about 5 a.m. and heard the tones go off. Actually, we were in the day room, which is where it's the living room of a fire station. And we heard the tones go off. We heard the police going to Fairview Road. And we just kind of sat and were wondering what was going on there.
Now, you yourself, you and Firefighter Becker, were you dispatched to a call as well, approximately 6:41 or 6:42 a.m.?
Yes.
And at the time that you received that dispatch, what, if anything, were you aware of with regard to the prior call that the other ambulance was?
So when the tones go off between the two stations, we're able to hear what the dispatch complaint is, what they're going for, and it came in as, I believe, CPR in progress in the snow or something to that regard. So we knew that it was a fairly serious call that Station 1 had gone to.
Now, when you received your dispatch at approximately 6:42 a.m. or so, what was that call in regard to, and where did you respond?
We were dispatched for a Section 12.
And as far as your assignments within the ambulance between yourself and Firefighter Becker, with regard to this call, who was doing what?
I was driving. He's what we call the tech, the lead paramedic on the case. That's just generally how we operate.
And from your response, or your driving from Station 2 to Fairview Road, what, if anything, did you observe or experience en route in between the two?
At that point, it was snowing pretty heavily. We were coming down Chapman Street, getting ready to take the right onto Fairview. We nearly slid off the road, making the turn onto Fairview. It was snowing that heavily, and I don't believe the roads had been really plowed or treated or anything like that for us to. So it was pretty slippery.
Now, in addition to ambulance number 2 that you and Firefighter Becker were in, what, if any, other sort of vehicles or apparatus was dispatched to this call as well?
There was Engine 3, which is the District 1 engine, and at least 2 police cruisers. And then another gray SUV kind of further down from where we parked.
Now, when you arrive in this area on Fairview Road, what, if anything, do you sort of observe as far as who's there when you arrive?
When I got out, my Lieutenant Woodbury and Sam Park were there.
And they were on the engine, is that correct?
They were on the engine, correct.
Now, beyond sort of personnel from your department, you mentioned that there were some police officers there as well?
Yes, Melanie and Sarah, and then 2 other females, at least 2 other females.
And the other 2 females, where were they when you first sort of get out of the ambulance?
A few yards ahead of us, a few dozen yards ahead of us, I'd say.
And were there any other vehicles beyond sort of first responders that you observed on?
Just that other gray SUV.
And so I guess my question is, where were the 2 females that you observed in relation to the gray SUV?
Near it, maybe in front of, maybe one was inside. There were 3 females there.
And at some point while you're on scene, you learned the identity of your patient, correct?
Yes.
And what was the name of the patient?
Karen Reed.
And you had some conversation with Karen Reed that day, is that correct?
Yes,
And do you see Karen Reed in the courtroom?
I do.
Could you just describe as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
She's seated right at that table right there,
I'm sorry, if you could just point as to where she is.
right here.
No, I just asked record reflect identification.
Okay.
Now, when you first sort of arrive on scene, who, if anyone, is the first person that you talk
Lieutenant Woodbury and Sam Park.
to? And following that conversation, who, if anyone, you speak to?
Probably briefly Lieutenant Mullaney, but more, not Lieutenant, Officer Mullaney and Officer Saraf.
Now, following your conversation, well, let me ask you this sort of in general terms. When you respond to a call for Section 12, what is sort of the protocol that you go through in regard to that?
Whether it's a Section 12 or any call, basically, the lead tech generally takes over immediate patient care, goes over, assesses. Usually the partner will go over and try and find out background details, try and find not only, well, especially for a Section 12, you want to get, the tech will get, which is Jason's role, the patient story, and then I'll get everyone else's story.
And at some point, you have a conversation with Ms. Reed as well.
Oh, yes.
And where is that in relation to vehicles on scene? So what is that initial conversation?
The initial conversation, she was very upset. She kept saying, so we had a Section 12 written, and that was to take her to the hospital because she made threats against her life, saying, I don't want to live anymore. If my husband dies, I don't want to be alive anymore. And myself and Jason and Lieutenant Woodbury were kind of like, well, that's seemingly more in the lines of normal grieving process after something traumatic happens to a loved one, whether they're going to die or not. We kind of didn't feel like it kind of led to that level of a Section 12 to have her transported to the hospital. So at that point, I exited the ambulance and I went to speak with Officer Saraf, and I said, this kind of doesn't, if we want her to be at the hospital, get a full eval, we're going to need more than just, if my husband dies, I want to die, because that seems just like normal grieving things to say. And so I went back to the ambulance. He went, I don't know where he went. I don't know whether it was cruiser or what, but he came back, notified me that her.
Sustain.
And from that conversation, did you receive more information or more clarity as to statements that Ms. Reed had made?
Yes, Officer Saraf had said that.
Objection.
So not what he said, sir. So
We
you
were
are
informed
unmuted.
that.
Objection.
I'm not sure.
So you can't testify to what somebody else told you. You can when there's no objection regarding what Ms. Reed told you,
Okay.
but you can't testify what anybody else told you.
Okay.
So when I say sustain, that means you have to stop. And,
Okay.
And the lawyer will ask another question.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Firefighter Whaley, at some point, specific to your conversations with the defendant, Ms. you described sort of her demeanor or any observations you made in relation to that as you were speaking.
Yes, she was very upset. She kept asking if there was any chance. She kept asking us if we knew if the person ambulance 1 had transported was alive or dead, and we could not speak to that. She asked if somebody could be alive in the snow without a jacket for many hours. And at that point, we were just trying to give her any hope that whomever A1 transported was still alive. And we kind of just talked about far off hypothermia cases where, kids have fallen in rivers and been submerged for many minutes, maybe even hours, and survived with no neurological deficits. So we were just trying to give her some sort of hope on the way to the hospital that there was a chance that her husband could be alive.
Now, at this point, what, if anything, did you know about sort of the relationship between your patient, the defendant, Ms. Reed, and the patient from ambulance 1 that had been transported previously?
She identified him as her husband
And is that something that she said once or more than once?
many, many times.
Now, she asked you some questions about his status and made specific reference to his clothes. Is that correct?
The only thing I recall is asking if he could have survived without a jacket.
Now, as far as these conversations that you had with Ms. Reed, where did they occur in relation to the ambulance?
They were in the back of the ambulance.
And who, if anyone, was present in the back of the ambulance beyond yourself and the defendant?
Jason Becker.
And with reference to, you mentioned that firefighter Becker was sort of the lead paramedic or the lead tech on this. Is that correct?
Yes.
So is there, from sort of his role and your role, what are some of the sort of differences in the duties and responsibilities in relation, we'll call it?
So for any Section 12 or our department policy is there will be 2 EMTs, paramedics, firefighters with during transport at all times. That's both for our safety and the patient safety. So that's why it wasn't just 2 EMTs or paramedics driving to the hospital. I was in back with Jason, and Sam Park was driving.
Now, as far as you testified earlier about observations of her being upset or distraught, is that correct?
Correct.
Was that consistent throughout your interaction with her, or?
No. There would be episodes where she would go from crying in her hands to all of a sudden perking up. She was crying about having to take care of kids, saying she couldn't do it. And I was saying, you can do this. It's not as hard as it seems. She kept saying, I can't take care of these kids. They're not my kids, and they're not his kids. That's when I figured out who ambulance 1 transported. And I was saying, well, it seems like you have a good, strong support system. People who came and helped you in a blizzard to help come find your husband. She said, she asked me if I knew Carrie Roberts. I said I did. She said anybody who knows Carrie Roberts wouldn't say those things. And that kind of took me aback a bit. It seemed strange to say something like that after you were just crying because your husband was dead.
Take you back just within.
I was just kind of surprised.
If I could take you back within that just for a minute. So you had testified that during that, her description, you sort of realized who was the patient in ambulance 1. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, made you realize, or who did you think it was?
I live in and grew up in the Ponquag neighborhood of Canton, and Mr. O'Keefe was known for taking on his niece and nephew after, I'm sorry, I'm not sure positive of the relationship, but I believe it was his sister and his brother-in-law passed away. And it was something people admired him for, people looked up to him for. But I was able to, I also, I moved into the Ponquag neighborhood back after living outside of Canton for a few years. The O'Keefes lived diagonally across from me. I never had any sort of interaction with him or anything. When I moved in, my wife was probably about 6 months pregnant, and I had 2 toddlers, so I was pretty busy. I figured he was pretty busy. I never even had a chance to introduce myself or anything before he moved to Meadows, which is how I kind of figured out.
Your Honor, I object to this line of questioning.
Okay, next, sustain, next question.
Now, you had also mentioned during your conversation with the defendant that she had said some things about Kerry Roberts, correct?
Correct.
And how is it that you know Kerry Roberts?
Well, Kerry lives around the corner from me.
Objection.
No, I'll allow that. Next question, please.
How long have you known Kerry Roberts?
Just from moving back into the neighborhood, she would run the neighborhood block party, and she put out that she would like the fire truck there on the neighborhood Facebook page. So I volunteered to bring the fire truck to the neighborhood block party.
And was Ms. Roberts seen on Fairview when you arrived in your ambulance?
Yes,
So she was one of the other females along with the defendant.
correct.
Now, with reference to when you brought up as far as support system, and included Ms. Roberts within that, what, if anything, did the defendant say about Ms. Roberts?
Objection.
Sustain. Next question, please.
Now, this conversation that you had with the defendant in the ambulance, about how long a period of time are we talking about?
20, 25 minutes.
And beyond what you've already testified to, what did sort of that conversation consist of, or what was the sort of tone and tenor of that conversation?
Again, we were just trying to give her any support. She was, once we were getting closer to the hospital, we
Objection.
So the tone and tenor. So what can you tell us about that? That's admissible, Mr. Yannetti. Go ahead.
the tone, she would go from being almost despondent to when she asked me if I knew Carrie Roberts, the only tone I can use to describe it is snarky.
Objection. Move to strike.
I'll strike that.
Now, you transported to a Good Samaritan, is that correct?
Correct.
And when you, during the transport, where are you in relation to Ms. Reed from Fairview to Good Samaritan?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
During the transport, Ms. Reed is where within the ambulance?
I believe we have what we call a tech bench, which is a long bench. There's the ambulance stretcher, and then to next to the ambulance stretcher is, we call it the CPR seat. And then that's where Miss Reed sat. And then I was in what we call the airway seat, which is basically like a captain's chair behind the stretcher.
And in addition to yourself and the defendant, who, if anyone else was sort of in the back of the ambulance at that time?
During transport?
Yes.
During transport, it was just me, Jason Becker, and Miss Reed.
So yourself along with firefighter Becker and, right?
Correct.
Who was driving you?
Sam Park.
Now, when you arrived at Good Samaritan, what, if anything, happened?
Miss Reed was asking to be able to see John, and I made the decision that I would run ahead to see if that was in the realm of possibility with the emergency room physician there. So I ran ahead. I came into they call it the code room at Good Sam, and I asked if the wife could see the husband. The ER doctor asked if she would be upset. I said if she would be upset if she was allowed to or not. And I said she's going to be upset. I believe she's going to be upset either way. He was asking if she would get in the way of the resuscitation efforts. And I said it's possible she's very upset.
And so once you arrive at the hospital with the patient, where do you go along with Ms. Reed?
We escorted her down to we call it the psych hall or the behavioral hall at Good Sam.
And about how long was it after you escorted her into the hospital that you stayed with her following that?
At least 10 minutes.
And during those 10 minutes, how would you describe sort of her behavior or demeanor during that time?
Objection.
No, he can testify to that.
He was giving the nurses a hard time about, I'm sorry, she was giving the nurses a hard time about having to get into a Johnny, about having to submit a urine sample. Even the AR text went to the physician who was in the code room to see if she could not have to wear a Johnny. And the ER doc said, no, if she's in the psych hall, she's a psych patient, needs to be in a Johnny. So at that point, there was just a nurse and a tech. We don't usually leave a psych patient with just a single nurse and a tech. So we decided to wait until security had gotten there before we left.
May I have one moment?
Yes.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Yannetti.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So, Mr. Whitley, when you showed up, you learned that Karen Reed was the patient that you were to deal with, correct?
Correct.
And it was your expectation that she would be going to the hospital, correct?
Correct.
One of the things that you do when you transport somebody to the hospital is you try to get a medical history, correct?
Yep.
Why is that important?
Generally, we get pertinent medical history to pass on to the hospital. So if something were to happen where the patient wasn't able to describe their past medical history, it gets passed on to the next caregiver, which would be the nurses, doctors at the hospital.
Okay. More information is always better than less information, correct?
I would say so.
And with regard to Ms. Reed, did you take a medical history from her?
I assume Jason did.
Okay. Did you learn the results of that medical history?
You'd have to refer to Jason's report.
I may have a moment now.
Yes.
May I approach?
Yes.
Mr. Whitley, if I'm actually going to show you two documents with your permission. One would be Jason's report.
Okay.
And you were talking about Jason Becker, correct?
Correct.
The other is a police report from Sergeant Yuri Buchnick. I'm going to give you the second page of that.
So let's do them one at a time.
Sure. And you've asked for Jason Becker's report, so I'll give you that first, okay?
Okay.
And when I approach you, I'm going to hand this to you, and I just ask you to look at it silently by yourself,
Okay.
and then look up at me when you're done.
Okay.
going to collect that from you if you don't mind.
The first report was the NFIRS report from my lieutenant.
Was Jason Becker's report included in?
Yes.
that as well?
Yep.
Having reviewed those documents, does that refresh your memory as to the medical history that was taken?
Yes.
And what can you tell us about that?
Just lists multiple sclerosis.
What is multiple sclerosis?
I believe it's a neurodegenerative disease where the myelin sheathing of the trying to think of the word here, but
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
you know, I understand.
I'm sure you do. It's a disease.
It's a disease that's progressive and has neurological muscle control things involved with it.
And when you say progressive, that means it gets worse over time as you age?
As I understand it.
And that was the medical history you got from Karen Lee?
Correct.
I'm not further.
All right. So, sir, you are all set. Thank you, Mr. Whitley. Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor, call Mr. Jason Becker to the stand.
Please watch your step. Face that clerk and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear the understanding of the court and jury in the case down here is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Okay, whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
First name is Jason. Last name is Becker. Becker.
And what do you do for work, sir?
I'm a firefighter paramedic, Canton Fire Department.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton Fire Department?
5.5 years.
And prior to that, what, if any, other employment did you have sort of within that same field?
I worked at Found Ambulance and South Shore Hospital.
How long did you work at each of those respective positions?
Found Ambulance was about 5 years. South Shore Hospital, approximately 3 years.
And with regard to South Shore Hospital, what is it that you did there?
I was a nursing assistant in the emergency room.
And with regard to your work as a firefighter paramedic for the Canton Fire Department, you were a certified paramedic?
Yes.
And when did you first receive that certification?
October 2021.
And is that something that you receive, or when you receive that, is something that goes on in perpetuity, or is that something that you have a continuing educational component or recertification?
It's Con Ed education. Every 2 years, you have to recertify.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, 2022 into January 29th, 2022. Were you working on that occasion?
I was.
And where were you assigned? I'm sorry. What type of shift were you working on that occasion?
What type of shift?
Yes, like what hour to what hour?
8 a.m. to 8 a.m., 24 hours.
So 8 a.m. on the 28th until 8 a.m. on the 29th.
Correct.
And where were you assigned on that day?
I was at Canton Station 2, Ambulance 2.
And who, if anyone else, was assigned with you to Ambulance 2 at Station 2 on that day?
Daniel Whitley, firefighter Daniel Whitley.
Now, at some point when you were working on the 29th, shortly after 6 a.m. or so, did you become aware of a call for station house number 1?
Yes.
And what, if anything, were you aware of as far as that earlier call?
As far as we know, it was a man down the road, initial, and I believe it was upgraded eventually to CPR in progress.
Now, At some point following that, approximately 6:41 a.m. or so, did you, your station dispatch to Fairview Road?
Yes.
And in regard to
A psych eval, possible section 12.
And in addition to yourself and firefighter Whitley in ambulance 2, what, if any, other sort of vehicles were dispatched by your department to that call?
Canton engine 3.
And if you know, who, if anyone, was on Canton Engine 3 at that time?
Lieutenant Greg Woodbury, firefighter Sam Park.
Now, with regard to the ambulance that you were in with firefighter Whitley, what were sort of, let me ask you this, between sort of call volume, what, if any, sort of policy or protocol is there as far as who does what on a particular call?
We switch off.
And so on this particular call that you were dispatched to Fairview Road, what were sort of each of your respective duties and responsibilities between yourself and firefighter Whitley?
Firefighter Whitley was the driver at that point, and it was my tech, is what it's called. So the next patient would be mine.
And so as sort of you were the lead tech on this, is that correct?
Correct.
And so as far as the lead tech's role, what, if any, duties or responsibilities do you have in regard to writing a report?
It's my report. That'd be right.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Your documents, just ask you to review that with us.
The first report up here is the engines. Second one would be mine.
You recognize the first few pages of that as the engines report, and the last few are yours, correct?
Correct.
And that's your report with relation to this dispatch and this call, correct?
Correct.
May I approach the engineer?
Yes.
I want the seat to introduce in a minute, isn't it?
So both reports through this witness? Is there any objection?
May I just take a look at the DA's copy? May we approach?
Okay. Bless you.
With that addendum, I would seek to introduce and admit that as the next exhibit.
Okay.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, can I return the report to the witness?
Yes.
Testimony. Now, sir, when you first sort of arrive in the area of 34, when you arrive in the area of Fairview Road, what, if anything, is it that you first observe upon your arrival?
Coming down the street or on scene?
Yes, coming down the street.
Coming down the street, see the live police lights. You can see the fire engine, and which is, I believe it says one black SUV.
And where is it that you and the ambulance sort of park in reference to those other vehicles that you see?
I believe we parked. If the SUV was facing towards us, we parked to the left. I don't recall where the police cruiser was, though.
And when you first arrive there, who, if anyone, is it that you first speak with when you get there?
When we got out of the ambulance, I passed Officer Saraf and Officer Mulaney. They kind of briefed us, and then I walked over to the black SUV.
And when you walk over to the black SUV, who is it that you observe in that black SUV?
I saw 2 females.
And of those 2 females, do you see one of them in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you just identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
Right over there, the jacket on.
That's the record reflect identification of the defendant.
Okay.
Now, with respect to the defendant, Ms. Reed, where within the vehicle is she when you first come up to the vehicle and observe?
When I remember, she was in the front passenger seat.
And what, if any, knowledge did you have as far as the defendant, Ms. Reed, and her relationship to the earlier call that ambulance wanted been dispatched?
Very little. I think we had gotten briefed that she was the wife of the previous patient.
And was that something that she had stated or something that somebody else had stated? Where does that awareness come
I
from?
believe it was one of the Canton police officers that said it.
I'm sorry, what was that answer?
It was one of the Canton police officers.
Okay.
And so when you walk up to the car, what is it that you say to her, or what, if any, conversation did you have with Ms. Reed at that?
So I went up to the window and introduced myself and just kind of asked what was going on.
And how did she respond to that?
She was kind of, she was distraught. She was crying. She kind of told us that the statements she may have made, she didn't mean it because of the current events that she had just gone through.
What, if anything, did she say about that? If anything, did she say about what she had gone through?
She had just done CPR on her husband.
And so she referred to him as her husband as well.
Yes.
And this conversation that you had sort of at the side of the SUV, is that through the door, through the window?
From what I recall, it was through the window.
And at some point, does the conversation move to the ambulance?
Correct.
About how long was the conversation at the vehicle before the conversation shifted to the ambulance?
5 to 10 minutes.
And as far as your dispatch for a psych or a section 12, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain to the jury sort of that process, just in general terms first, as far as what does that process entail?
And when we get on scene
Yes.
for a section,
Yes, please.
we go on scene, we kind of look at the environment, see what the environment's like, see if the patient's cooperative, uncooperative, what their demeanor is, if there's any obvious self-harm. If there's none, we kind of go up and talk to them, get a report, and ask them some basic triage questions.
And is that sort of the policy or the protocol or what you followed in this instance with Ms. Reed?
Correct.
Now, beyond what she had indicated to you initially, what, if anything, was she asking you during the course of your conversation with her once you were in the ambulance?
She kept asking if he was dead or could he be dead.
Is that something that she said once or more than once or something?
More than once.
And could you describe sort of the tone of her voice when she was saying?
It was pretty, it's kind of like it was a rapid kind of pressure speech. She was just a lot repetitive.
And as you were speaking with her, what, if any, observations did you make of her facial area?
She had blood on her face and her neck and her blood around her mouth, her neck and chin.
So with regard to sort of any earlier suicidal statements, what, if anything, did she say in relation to that?
She said she made them because she just went through traumatic events, seeing her husband dead, and she had no plan on acting on it.
Now, pursuant to a Section 12 call, what, if anything, are you doing as far as documentation goes with respect to vital signs, things like that?
Well, it depends on the situation. In a situation with misreads, I took a regular just vital signs, pulse oximetry to see her heart rate. But for someone like a female psych patient, it's more verbal.
And as far as any of those sort of vital signs and things that you took, what, if anything, abnormal did you note in regard to that?
There's nothing too abnormal. Just the heart rate might have been a little bit high, but within normal range.
Could you please keep your voice up, sir? Thank you.
Sorry. With the vital signs, her heart rate was a little high. It was 98, but it was nothing concerning.
During the time that you're having this conversation with her in the back of the ambulance, how would you describe it?
She would have periods of calmness, and then other periods she would appear agitated because she didn't want to go to the hospital. But all in all, she was cooperative with us.
Now, at some point, she's cooperative, correct, and agrees to go?
Eventually, yes.
When you say eventually, was there some conversation related?
We kind of mentioned to her basically what a Section 12 is. And unfortunately, she'd have to come with us voluntarily or involuntarily.
So you're explaining the process to her, is that correct?
Correct.
Eventually, she agrees to go, correct?
Correct.
And as far as the transport goes, who, if anyone, is in the back of the ambulance with her during the transport period?
Me and firefighter Whitley.
And who, if anyone, was driving the ambulance to the hospital?
Firefighter Park.
And which hospital did you transport Ms. Reed to?
We went to the Good Samaritan Hospital.
Now, during the course of transfer to the hospital, what, if anything else, did Ms. Reed say with reference to children?
She was talking about Keith's children, and she was unsure, and she didn't know if she'd be able to take care of them. She was worried about that.
She was worried about that.
Yeah, she's worried about who would take care of the children if he was pronounced dead.
And what, if anything, did she say about herself in reference to the children?
She didn't think that she could take care of them on her own.
Now, as far as this other person or the patient from the earlier call, how did she to that person in relationship to yourself?
She was calling him husband.
Now, with reference to this particular, with reference to Ms. Reed in this conversation, what, if anything, did she say in regards to the last time that she had spoken to who she called her husband?
She had said that they had gotten into an argument. She was sad because that was the last thing she had said to him was the argument, but she didn't go into detail on what the argument was about or what was said.
Now, with regard to her speaking about the children, what, if any, further conversation did either yourself or firefighter Whitby have with her in regard to that?
With children?
Yes.
I don't recall.
The other female party that Miss Reed was initially with in the vehicle when you first arrived, did you know who that was?
I don't know who she was.
And at any point in time, subsequent to that, did you learn who she was?
I did.
And who did you learn her to be?
She was Miss Carrie Roberts.
And with relation to your conversation with Miss Reed on that day of January 29th, what, if anything, did she say about Miss Roberts?
Objection.
Sustained.
The regard to the sort of medical questions that you were asked, from those medical questions, what, if any, questions would you typically ask someone with relation to consumption of alcohol or drugs?
Well, probably part of the psych assessment, I asked if she had taken any drugs or alcohol, and she had denied it at that point.
She said that she had not, correct?
Correct.
The observations that you testified to earlier in regard to her, and by her I mean Ms. Reed's demeanor, did that change at all during the course of your interaction with her, or was that consistent throughout?
Demeanor, as in,
It's a poorly phrased question. Let me try and rephrase it. So, with regard to her demeanor throughout the course of your interaction with her, how would you describe that?
she was cooperative. Then she'd be calm, and then eventually she would kind of get a little agitated and repetitive questions. But she seemed distraught.
Now, with respect to the person she indicated was her husband, what, if any, questions did she ask either you or Firefighter Whitley or both in relation to him?
She was asking if he was dead, or could he be dead? Could be dead, and she said, "Could I have hit him?"
Was that something that she asked once or more than once?
It wasn't a lot. It was more of could he be dead? Could he be dead?
So somewhat repetitive, is that correct?
Correct.
Just one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Firefighter Becker, just my own clarification. You testified earlier that first arriving on scene and first spoke with Ms. Reed, she indicated that there was some statements that she said there were some statements that she did not mean, correct?
Correct. Suicidal statements.
And so, exactly. So my question is, that was in reference to the suicidal statements she had made prior to your arrival, correct?
Correct.
Not to any subsequent statements, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Rona. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
You and I have never met, right?
I don't believe so.
I wanted to go back to one piece of testimony that you offered on direct examination, if I may.
Sure.
You had, in response to a question from the prosecutor about the medical history and your question to Ms. Reed about whether she had had any alcohol to drink. I believe your answer today was she denied having drank alcohol the night before?
At the time that she was, she could have drank, I don't know if she drank alcohol the night before, but at that time I asked if she had any drugs or alcohol, and she said no.
I'm sorry, if I just didn't hear.
Yeah,
the
you
answer.
need to keep your voice up, sir. Speak
Okay.
directly into
Sorry.
the microphone.
So I asked her if she had any drugs or alcohol, and she said no.
Oh, if she had any drugs.
Well,
or
has she
alcohol.
taken any drugs or alcohol? She said no.
Did you specify a time period?
I just assumed it'd be in the last few hours for the reason why we were there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Unsure if she had alcohol days prior, but for the reason why we were there.
Okay. So was it your understanding that the two of you had an understanding of what you were asking?
Sure.
Objection, move to
Yeah,
strike.
yeah. So the objection sustained. It's stricken. Ask the question differently, Ms. Giannetti.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, so I guess with regard to your intent and your state of mind when you were asking that question, you were asking, had you taken any drugs or alcohol within the last few hours? That's what you meant to ask?
Objection.
So the objection sustained.
What did you specifically ask?
So when I ask a patient if any drugs or alcohol, I'm talking about at that point in time, but an hour before, 2 hours before, not days before, weeks before.
Okay,
So-
and this was at 6:40 in the morning,
Correct.
Did you smell any alcohol on her at that time?
I did not.
Okay. You would agree that she did tell you at some point that she had alcohol the night before, correct?
No.
All right. So this is now, what's today, May 3rd of 2024?
Correct.
And this happened back in January, on January 29th of 2022?
Correct.
You were interviewed by a Trooper Michael Proctor on February 14th of 2022. Do you recall that?
I recall meeting with him, yes.
And February 14th of 2022 would have been a little bit more than 2 weeks after January 29th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
Your memory of what Karen Reed told you about whether she had anything to drink the night before would have been much better on February 14th of 2022 when you were talking to Trooper Michael Proctor than it would be today, correct?
Correct.
Because your memory doesn't get better over time, correct?
Certain circumstances, sure.
All right. And with regard to whether Karen had indicated that she took any drugs, you told Trooper Proctor she said that she had not, correct?
Correct.
With regard to whether she had had alcohol the night before, you told Trooper Proctor on February 14th of 2022 that she did consume alcohol last night, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
All right, I'm going to see a sidebar on this. Please bring that with you, please.
Did you miss anything? Did you look here?
With your permission, I'll repeat the question.
Sure.
You told Trooper Proctor on February 14th of 2022 that Karen had told you that she did consume alcohol the previous night, correct?
If that's in his notes,
Well, is your memory exhausted as to whether you told him that?
I don't recall.
If you saw his report with your statements in it, would that refresh your memory?
Sure.
It's a two-page report. I'll give you both, actually. It's a two-page report. I'll give you both pages, but I have highlighted a line on the second page, so I would direct you to that. May I approach?
Yes. And take your time reading it, sir.
Yes, yeah, and please read it silently to yourself and look up at me when you're done.
So I did say.
So, Mr. Becker, a couple of things. Wait for a question,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but
Sorry.
also
Sorry.
you have to keep your voice up.
Okay.
I'm close to you and I'm having trouble hearing you. Most
Okay.
of the jurors are further away.
And the way this works is I have to collect that from you and then ask you a question, okay?
So,
If I may approach you on.
Yes.
Having reviewed that document, does that refresh your memory as to whether or not Karen Reed, or strike that? Having reviewed that report, does that refresh your memory as to the fact that you?
Does that refresh your memory?
Does that refresh your memory?
it does.
Okay, and so did you tell Trooper Proctor on February 14th that Karen Reed had told you on January 29th that she had consumed alcohol the night before that?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say that when you were listening to her talk at times, that her speech was very rapid?
Correct.
And particularly when she had said the words, you know, is he dead? Is he dead? She would repeat it repetitively, correct?
Correct.
And she was fixated on that, correct?
Correct.
And with regard to the last interaction that she spoke about with whom you thought she said her husband, she didn't give you any detail about that, correct?
She did not.
You don't know whether it was an in-person communication?
That wasn't my position to ask more details about that.
And I'm not criticizing you, sir. I'm just trying to get to what your knowledge was in terms of the
Right.
information you got from her. So she didn't specify that it was an in-person communication, correct?
No,
She didn't specify as to whether it was a phone conversation?
she did not.
She didn't specify whether it was a text message exchange back and forth?
She did not.
And she didn't specify whether it was an angry voicemail that she left, correct?
She did not.
No further questions. Thank you.
Just one moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
I have nothing further for this witness, Your Honor.
All right. All right, Mr. Becker or Firefighter Becker, you are all set, sir. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you. Yes, you can leave that right where it is. Thank you, sir. Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Your Honor, may we approach?
Sure. Does it make sense that rather than starting with another witness, figure it's a Friday afternoon, it's been a long week for you all, we'll excuse you at this point. So please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into this case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case, disregard it and let us know. And have a great weekend. Monday will be a full day. We'll see you first thing Monday night.
Rise for the jury. Rise right this way. Oh, sure.
May be seated.
I think there's an exhibit in the witness stand. All right, because I've decided that it makes more sense to do exhibits the old-fashioned way because it's simply not working out. And they're additional that are in the 300s and 200s. So what I would like to do is take all of these, and I know Madam Court Reporter has been great about sticking around all late during the week to pre-mark things. This is more important to me that we get the record straight from this point. I would prefer the jurors to have the exhibits in order and not have numbers 200 and 300 in where they should be 15 and 16. So what I would like you to all do is take a look at the exhibits that have actually been introduced. Their prior numbers, if you have referred to them by their prior numbers, I will permit you for the rest of the trial to say previously referred to as 308, but now exhibit 15 until you feel you don't need to do that anymore. So it means things are going to have to be renumbered. So, Madam Court Reporter, was there anything else we needed to discuss on this? Is there anything else you need from the lawyers? Okay. So, I don't want to use your you've got a list of everything, and Mr. McDermott's got a list of everything that's been introduced. Do you need me to do this, or is this something you can all do with Madam Court Reporter? And I want to come out and make sure it's right. All right, so why don't you all take 10 minutes to see if you can work this through. I'll come out at the end of 10 minutes, see what you have, and we'll make sure the record's straight. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does. The only thing that I would ask to add to that, Your Honor, is in conformity with the court's ruling as far as redaction to the run sheets and the run reports. I'm not sure if they've been stickered or not, but there are medical records with regard to both the victim and the defendant that would be in there, and I would ask for them to either be marked for identification or taken out at this point. Ms. McLaughlin indicates they haven't been marked yet, so I would just ask to sort of retrieve.
All right, so that's sort of the second point. I assume there are many pages of medical records, and one of the things I told you this morning is if records are going to be introduced subject to redactions, those redactions have to be done before they're introduced. It's going to take some time. So you have to be, if you're not in agreement, then you need to tell me what you're not in agreement over, and I'll have to decide it, but they need to be redacted beforehand. Just because this is a long trial, I don't want it to take any longer than it necessarily has to be. And we have to make sure all of the exhibits are in order, especially if they do end up numbering in the hundreds. So, all right, so you've factored that into your schedule. We've got many days that we won't be in session. It seems like a good use of council's time to redact records and talk. If you need additional time and we need to cut into the evidence, I'd prefer not to, but I need to know. All right. So I have received from the Commonwealth all of the videos that I requested. I received a flash drive today. When can I get the videos? I thought I was clear yesterday. Apparently I wasn't. So when can I get all of the videos that the defendants intend to introduce? I had hoped to look at them over the weekend.
We can do, it's not a matter of getting them onto a flash drive, that's quick. It's just a matter of getting them to the court. So I would invite the court to direct us how, if you want to use the weekend, let us know. We work on Saturdays and Sundays.
So so you can't do it today? You can't do it before you leave? I don't think your IT person's here, right?
I might
Oh,
be able to.
if you can do it before you leave, if he can just download it onto a flash drive, that would be great. Do you want to go talk to him and see how long?
You might be able to do
Yeah,
that.
We may be able to do that.
Why don't you talk to him?
Yes. Yes.
All right. That
We won't leave until we give them to you.
that would be great. And Ms. Gianetti, yesterday you did say that you'd also give me some idea on why you think they're coming in.
Sure.
Okay, so if you have that, that would be great.
Yeah.
All right.
You I just want to make sure I'm very clear about what the court would like. We provided the double videos, the ones that we had put the good and Seraph cameras together. The court wants every single video that we intend to produce
Yes.
for the rest of trial.
Yes.
Okay, understood.
All right, and that's what I requested from both of you. I received, Ms. Gilman, tell me if I'm wrong, but Mr. McDermott handed me a flash drive today that said this was all the Commonwealth's video exhibits. Yes.
And that was after we met this morning, correct? Okay.
All right, so that'd be great. I just, I want to know what's on them. I was surprised yesterday and I
Understood.
shouldn't be surprised.
Understood.
All right, so I'll come out after you remark the exhibits. Do you need a break before then, Madam Court Reporter? Mr. McDermott? All right, thanks.
Court, all rise, please.